Ambassador Park Minji stood at the center of the Great Council chamber and looked up at the thousands of alien faces staring down at her. The massive dome stretched high above her head, filled with representatives from 847 different species. Some breathed air like humans, others floated in tanks of liquid, and a few existed as pure energy forms that flickered like colored lights. She had given speeches here many times before, but today felt different. Today would change everything. The chamber buzzed with the usual sounds of alien conversation. The crystalline beings made soft, chiming noises, while the hegemony delegates growled in their deep voices. The universal translators worked hard to turn all these sounds into words that everyone could understand. Park Minji had spent 20 years working with these systems, fixing problems and making improvements that kept the whole council running smoothly. Most aliens never noticed this work, but she knew how important it was. Council Speaker Velthar floated in the center of the chamber, its crystal body glowing with soft blue light. The ancient being had led the council for 300 years and had seen many species come and go. When it spoke, its voice echoed through every translator in the dome. The council recognizes Ambassador Park Minji of the Human Federation, Velthar announced. You may present your routine quarterly report. Park Minji smiled, but there was no warmth in it. She reached into her jacket and pulled out a small device. With one press of a button, she activated a recording system that would send her words directly to every human ship and colony in the galaxy. Thank you, Speaker Velthar, she began. But I am not here to give a routine report today. The chamber grew quieter. Some of the alien delegates leaned forward in their seats. Humans rarely did anything unexpected in council meetings. They usually just agreed with whatever the bigger species decided and went back to their assigned duties. I am here to announce that the Human Federation is ending all diplomatic relations with the Galactic Council, effective immediately. The chamber exploded into chaos. Aliens jumped to their feet, making sounds of shock and anger. The translators struggled to keep up with all the different languages being spoken at once. Some delegates demanded to know what Park Minji meant, while others called for security to remove her from the chamber. Park Minji waited for the noise to die down, then continued speaking. For 47 years, humans have served this council faithfully. We have fought in your wars, maintained your systems, and solved your problems. We have asked for very little in return, only to be treated with the same respect you show each other. War Admiral Kexmorian of the Hegemony Coalition stood up, his massive form towering over the other delegates. His species looked like walking, mountains covered in thick gray skin, and when he spoke, his voice was like rolling thunder. The humans dare to make demands? He rumbled. You are a young species with barely 50 worlds. You should be grateful that we allow you to serve the council at all. Park Minji turned to face him directly. And there is the problem, Admiral. You see our service as a privilege we should be grateful for, not as valuable work that deserves fair treatment. Captain Lee Doyun watched the council meeting from the bridge of his ship, the Soul's Promise, which orbited the station along with the rest of the human diplomatic fleet. His crew of 35 was small compared to the massive alien warships nearby, but every person on board knew their job perfectly. Lee Do-yun had served in the human space navy for 15 years, and he had learned to be very good at following orders, especially important ones like today. Captain, called out Lieutenant Choi Sunwoo from the communication station. Ambassador Park has given the signal. All human personnel are being recalled from the station. Lee Do-yun nodded. Begin evacuation procedures. I want every human off that station in 2 hours. Dr. Kim Taiwan was already busy in his laboratory deep inside the council station. As the chief xenobiologist, he had access to some of the most important research databases in the galaxy. For months, he had been secretly copying everything that might be useful to humanity while preparing to delete all the information that humans had contributed over the years. His fingers moved quickly across the control panels as he downloaded centuries of alien scientific data, medical treatments, technological specifications, star charts, and cultural information all flowed into hidden storage devices. At the same time, he activated programs that would wipe clean every piece of human knowledge from the Council's systems. The aliens had always taken human discoveries and improvements for granted. They never seemed to realize how much humans had contributed to their science and technology. Today, they would start learning that lesson. Back in the council chamber, Park, Minji continued her speech. We have decided that we no longer wish to participate in a system that treats us as servants rather than partners. Human colonies will become independent. Human trade routes will close to council ships. Human technology and expertise will no longer be available to council projects. An alien delegate from the Botanical Confederation rose to speak. Her species looked like walking trees, with bark for skin and leaves for hair. Ambassador Park, surely you cannot be serious about this. Your species depends on council trade and protection. Without us, you will be isolated and vulnerable. We have been preparing for independence longer than you might think, Park Minji replied. Human colonies are already self-sufficient. Our defense forces are ready to protect our worlds. We do not need the council's protection, and we certainly do not need your trade agreements that always seem to benefit everyone except humans. Council Speaker Velthar's crystal body flashed with brighter light, showing its agitation. This is madness, Ambassador. The Council has always treated humanity fairly. You have been given important responsibilities and trusted with vital systems. Park Minji laughed, but the sound was not pleasant. Trusted with vital systems, yes, but never trusted with important decisions. When did the Council last ask for human input on major policy? When did a human ever serve on the High Command? We maintain your computers, fix your machines, and fight your battles. But we are never included when you decide what those battles are for. More aliens began standing and shouting. Some demanded that humans be forced to stay in the Council. Others suggested that humanity should be punished for this betrayal. A few quieter voices asked if there might be truth in what Park Minji was saying, but these were quickly drowned out by the louder protests. Captain Lee Do-yun received regular updates as his people evacuated the Council station. Engineers disconnected human-built systems and took them back to the ships. Scientists gathered their research and deleted their files. Diplomats collected their belongings and said goodbye to the few alien friends they had made over the years. Captain, reported Commander Park Ji-soo from the station's docking bay. All human personnel are aboard. We're ready to depart. Good, Lee Do-yun replied. Take us out of orbit and prepare the jump drives. We're going home. Dr. Kim Tae-won finished his work in the laboratory and headed for the docking bay. Behind him, computer systems began shutting down as the programs he had planted started their work. Years of human contributions to alien science were disappearing from the databases. Translation matrices that humans had improved were reverting to older, less accurate versions. Environmental controls that humans had fine-tuned were returning to their original, less efficient settings. As Park Minji finished her speech, she looked up at the thousands of alien faces staring down at her. Some showed anger, others confusion, and a few seemed worried about what would happen next. This is not about hatred or revenge, she said. This is about dignity and respect. When you are ready to treat humans as equals rather than useful servants, you know where to find us. Until then, we wish you well. But we will make our own way in the galaxy. She turned and walked out of the chamber, ignoring the chaos that erupted behind her. The sound of alien voices arguing and demanding answers followed her down the corridor, but she did not look back. Within hours, every human had left the Council station and the surrounding space. The small fleet of human ships jumped into hyperspace, leaving behind only empty docking bays and confused aliens trying to figure out what had just happened. The message they left behind was simple, but clear. Humanity was no longer willing to be the galaxy's servants. They would find their own path among the stars. 3 months had passed since the humans left, and Director Choi Hyesung sat in her office on Earth, watching reports flood in from across human space. As head of Human Intelligence Services, she had spent years planning for this moment. The withdrawal from the Galactic Council was not a sudden decision made in anger. It had been carefully planned for over a decade, and now the real work was beginning. "Director," called her assistant, Agent Kim Woo-jin, as he entered the office with a tablet full of new information. "We're getting reports from our monitoring stations near Council space. Their communications are becoming more unstable each day." Choi Hye-sung smiled as she read the reports. The universal translation system that connected all Council species was breaking down. For years, human technicians had quietly improved the software, fixing errors and adding new features. The aliens had never noticed this work because everything had always functioned perfectly. Now they were learning how much they had depended on human expertise. Far away on the massive space station, Concordia Prime, Council Speaker Velthar floated in its private chamber, surrounded by holographic displays showing problems across the galaxy. The crystal being had ruled the Council for 3 centuries, but it had never faced a crisis like this one. Every day brought new reports of systems failing and problems growing worse. The door to the chamber opened, and War Admiral Kexamorian entered. The massive hegemony warrior looked tired and frustrated, which was unusual for his normally confident species. "Speaker," Kexamorian said, "we need to discuss the situation. My forces are reporting serious problems in the outer sectors." Velthar's crystal body pulsed with dim light. "What kind of problems, Admiral?" "Pirate attacks are increasing everywhere humans used to patrol. The shipping lanes between Rigel and Vega have become completely unsafe. 3 merchant convoys have been attacked this week alone." The Council had never realized how much work human patrol ships had been doing. Human captains like Li Dohyun had spent years protecting trade routes, chasing away pirates, and keeping space lanes safe for alien merchants. They had done this work quietly and efficiently, never asking for recognition or reward. Now that they were gone, the galaxy was becoming a much more dangerous place. Engineer Kang Ji-won stood in the Defense Command Center on Earth's moon, watching displays that showed the positions of every human ship in the galaxy. For 5 years, she had been secretly designing new defensive systems for human worlds. While the aliens had thought humans were just maintaining old equipment, Kang Ji-won and her team had been building something much more advanced. "How are the colony defenses coming along?" she asked her assistant, Dr. Song Min-hyuk. "New Busan is completely ready," he reported. "The orbital platforms are online, and the shield generators are working perfectly. The other colonies should be finished within 6 months." Kang Ji-won nodded with satisfaction. When the humans had first joined the Council, they had been given old, outdated defensive technology. The aliens had claimed this was for humanity's own protection. But Kang Ji-won had always suspected they simply wanted to keep humans weak and dependent. Now, human worlds would have defenses that were better than anything the Council possessed. Back on Concordia Prime, the problems were getting worse every day. The environmental systems that controlled air, water, and temperature throughout the massive station were beginning to malfunction. Strange smells filled some sections, while others became too hot or too cold for their alien inhabitants. Chief Engineer Nalvex of the Zephyrian Trade Consortium stood in the main engineering bay, staring at control panels that no longer made sense. His species was known for their technical skills, but the systems around him had been modified so many times by human engineers that he could not understand how they worked. "Sir," called one of his assistants, "the atmospheric processors in Section 7 have shut down completely. We cannot figure out how to restart them." Nalvex felt a growing sense of panic. For years, he had supervised human engineers who maintained these systems. They had always been polite and helpful, fixing problems quickly and keeping everything running smoothly. He had never bothered to learn exactly what they were doing because their work had always been perfect. Now he was beginning to understand how much knowledge had walked out the door with them. Dr. Yu Sulgi worked in her laboratory beneath the mountains of Korea, surrounded by equipment that would have amazed the aliens if they had known it existed. As humanity's leading expert in exotic physics, she had spent years studying alien technology and finding ways to improve it. The Council had always dismissed human scientific contributions, claiming that young species could not possibly understand advanced concepts. This attitude had given her the perfect cover to develop revolutionary new technologies in secret. "Doctor," said her research partner, Dr. An Ji-ho, "the dimensional phase tests are showing remarkable results. We should be able to move ships through folded space much faster than anything the aliens can achieve." Yu Silgi studied the data with excitement. Human scientists had always been told they were not advanced enough to work on cutting-edge physics projects. They had been assigned to routine maintenance and simple research tasks, while alien scientists took credit for the important discoveries. Now, humanity would show the galaxy what human minds could really accomplish when they were free to work without restrictions. The Botanical Confederation was facing its own crisis. Their food shipments to dozens of worlds were spoiling because the preservation systems were failing. These systems had been designed by alien engineers, but human technicians had improved them over the years, making them more efficient and reliable. Without human maintenance, the equipment was returning to its original, less effective operation. Trade Commissioner Silidora stood in her office, looking at reports of massive financial losses. Her tree-like species had always prided itself on providing food to the galaxy, but now their reputation was being destroyed by spoiled shipments and failed deliveries. How did this happen? She asked her assistant. These systems worked perfectly. For decades. The humans made many small improvements over the years, the assistant explained. We never documented these changes because we thought they were minor. Now we cannot maintain the equipment without their expertise. Similar problems were affecting every part of the Council's operations. Communication networks were developing, delays and errors. Transportation systems were becoming unreliable. Even simple things like door locks and lighting controls were starting to malfunction because the human technicians who had maintained them were no longer available. Director Choi Hee-sung read these reports with satisfaction. Protocol Silence was working exactly as planned. Every human colony, every human ship, and every human citizen had stopped all communication with alien species. The galaxy had never realized how much information flowed through human networks, until that flow suddenly stopped. Human traders had been carrying messages between alien worlds for decades. Human diplomats had been helping to resolve disputes and negotiate agreements. Human scientists had been sharing research and coordinating projects across vast distances. All of this activity had ceased overnight, leaving the aliens to discover how much they had depended on human cooperation. Council Speaker Velthar called an emergency session to address the growing crisis. Representatives from hundreds of species gathered in the Great Chamber, but the meeting was chaotic and disorganized. The translation system was producing strange errors, causing misunderstandings and arguments between delegates who could no longer communicate clearly with each other. "We must take action," declared War Admiral Kex Morian. "The humans cannot be allowed to abandon their responsibilities. We should send a military force to bring them back." Many delegates agreed with him, shouting their support for military action. But others were beginning to have doubts. Had they really been treating humans fairly? Had they taken human contributions for granted? Mediator Ithkaran of the Peaceful Alliance stood to speak. Her species had always advocated for diplomatic solutions to problems. Perhaps we should consider why the humans left. Maybe there is truth in their complaints about unfair treatment. "Nonsense," growled Kex Morian. "Humans are a young species. They should be grateful for the opportunity to serve the Council. If they will not fulfill their duties willingly, then we must force them to return." But even as he spoke these words, more reports were arriving of systems failing and problems growing worse. The galaxy was learning that humans had not been just servants following orders. They had been skilled professionals whose expertise had kept civilization running smoothly. On Earth, Director Choi Hee-sung activated the final phase of Protocol Silence. Every piece of human technology that remained in alien hands would stop working within days. Computer programs would delete themselves, machines would shut down, and weapons would become useless. The aliens had always assumed they understood human technology well enough to maintain it themselves. Soon they would discover how wrong they had been. The galaxy was about to learn that humans were not servants who could be easily replaced. They were partners whose absence would be felt in every corner of known space. Admiral Nam Seojun stood on the bridge of the battleship Teguk, watching the massive alien fleet approach the outer edge of the Sol system. His defense force consisted of only 200 ships, tiny compared to the 3,000 vessels that War Admiral Kex Morian had brought from the Galactic Council. But Nam Seojun was not worried. He had been preparing for this moment for years, and he knew something the aliens did not. Human technology had advanced far beyond what the Council believed possible. "Admiral," reported Captain Yoon Subin from the sensor station, "the alien fleet is maintaining formation at the edge of our sensor range. They appear to be waiting for something." Nam Seojun nodded. The aliens were probably expecting humans to surrender immediately when they saw the size of the force arrayed against them. After all, the Council had always treated humanity as a weak species that survived only through alien protection. Today they would learn how wrong they had been. 6 months had passed since humanity left the Council, and the galaxy was falling. apart. War Admiral Kex Morian had watched his coalition forces struggle with equipment failures and communication breakdowns. Pirates attacked merchant ships with increasing boldness. Several star systems had declared independence from the Council rather than deal with the chaos that seemed to grow worse each day. The final straw had come when the hegemony's own worlds began experiencing food shortages because their agricultural systems were failing without human maintenance. Kex Morian had decided that enough was enough. If humans would not return willingly, then they would be forced to resume their duties through military action. "Signal the human defenders," Kex Morian ordered from his flagship's bridge. "Inform them that they have 1 hour to surrender and return to Council authority. If they refuse, we will take their worlds by force." On Earth, Governor Lim Da-yoon received the alien ultimatum in her office beneath the Planetary Defense Center. As administrator of the human colony world New Busan, she had spent years watching aliens treat human settlements as unimportant outposts that existed only to serve Council interests. The aliens had never bothered to learn about human culture or achievements. They had simply assumed that humans would always be grateful for whatever scraps of respect they were offered. "Governor," said her assistant, Director Han Jamin, "the defense systems are ready. Our people are prepared for whatever comes next." Lim Da-hyun smiled as she looked at the reports from human colonies across the galaxy. New Busan was not the isolated, vulnerable settlement that the aliens remembered. Engineer Kang Ji-won's team had transformed it into a fortress that could defend itself against any attack. The same was true for every human world. They no longer needed alien protection because they had built something much better themselves. Dr. Yu Seulgi watched the approaching alien fleet from her laboratory and activated the dimensional phase, drives that her team had perfected over the past months. This technology allowed human ships to slip partially out of normal space, making them nearly impossible to target while still allowing them to fire their weapons with deadly accuracy. "Doctor," called her research partner, Dr. An Jiho, "the phase generators are operating at maximum efficiency. Our ships can engage the enemy without risk of serious damage." Yu Seulgi had always wondered what would happen if humans were free to develop technology without alien interference. The Council had claimed that young species needed guidance and restrictions to prevent them from creating dangerous weapons, but she suspected the real reason was that the aliens wanted to keep humanity weak and dependent. Now the galaxy would see what human creativity could accomplish without those artificial limitations. The hour of grace ended, and War Admiral Kex Morian gave the order to attack. His massive fleet moved forward in perfect formation, confident that their overwhelming numbers would quickly crush any resistance. The alien commanders had studied old reports about human military capabilities and believed they knew exactly what to expect. They were completely unprepared for what actually happened. Admiral Nam Seojun's ships seemed to flicker in and out of existence, appearing just long enough to fire precise bursts of energy before vanishing again. The alien weapons could not lock onto targets that were not fully present in normal space. Meanwhile, human missiles struck alien ships with devastating accuracy, guided by sensors that could track enemies across multiple dimensions. "What is happening?" demanded Kex Morian, as his flagship shook under human fire. "How are they doing this?" His tactical officer, a nervous member of the crystalline species, studied sensor readings that made no sense. "Sir, the human ships appear to be using some form of dimensional manipulation technology. Our weapons cannot target them effectively." Kex Morian felt a growing sense of panic. The humans were supposed to be technologically inferior. Their equipment was supposed to be decades behind Council standards, but the ships attacking his fleet were using technology that seemed impossible. The battle continued for several hours, and it quickly became clear that the alien fleet was losing badly. Human ships darted in and out of phase, striking key targets, and disappearing before the aliens could respond. They did not try to destroy the alien vessels completely, but instead focused on disabling their engines, weapons, and communication systems. Captain Lee Do-hyun commanded one of the human attack squadrons, leading his pilots in carefully coordinated strikes against the alien formation. His ship, the Soul's Promise, had been upgraded with the latest human technology and could outmaneuver anything the aliens possessed. "Target their command ship's communication array," he ordered his weapons officer, Lieutenant Park Soman. We want to make sure they cannot coordinate their retreat. The attack succeeded perfectly, leaving Kexamorian's flagship unable to communicate with the rest of his fleet. Similar strikes across the battlefield left hundreds of alien ships drifting helplessly in space, their crews unharmed but their vessels completely disabled. On New Busan, Governor Lim Da-yoon watched orbital defense. Platforms destroy alien landing craft that tried to reach the planet's surface. The automated systems that engineer Kang Ji-won had designed worked flawlessly, intercepting enemy ships before they could threaten the colony below. Governor, reported Defense Coordinator Oh Sung-ho. All landing attempts have been repelled. The aliens cannot break through our orbital defenses. Lim Da-yoon was not surprised. Human colonies had learned to be completely self-sufficient during their years of service to the Council. They had their own factories, farms, and research facilities. They did not need alien trade or support to survive and prosper. In fact, many human settlements had grown stronger and more advanced since cutting their ties with the Council. As the battle in space continued, it became obvious that the alien fleet was trapped. They could not advance against the human defenses, but they also could not retreat because their engines had been disabled. Hundreds of ships drifted helplessly while their crews tried desperately to repair the damage. Dr. Yu Selgi decided it was time to demonstrate the full capabilities of human technology. She activated a massive phase generator that had been hidden beneath the surface of Earth's moon. The device created a dimensional field that surrounded the entire alien fleet, preventing them from using their faster-than-light drives even if they managed to repair their engines. "This is Admiral Nam Seojun of the Human Defense Force," came a message broadcast to every alien ship. "Your fleet has been defeated and captured. We have not killed your crews because we are not interested in starting a war. We simply want to be left alone." War Admiral Kexamorian sat on his damaged bridge, staring at displays that showed the complete destruction of his formation. 3,000 of the galaxy's most advanced warships had been defeated by 200 human vessels using technology that seemed to come from science fiction. "How is this possible?" he whispered. "The humans were supposed to be a primitive species. Their technology was supposed to be inferior to ours." His tactical officer had finally figured out what was happening. "Sir, I believe the humans have been deliberately hiding their true capabilities for decades. They have been developing advanced technology in secret while pretending to be dependent on Council support." The truth was beginning to dawn on Kexamorian and his surviving officers. Humanity had not been a weak species that needed alien protection. They had been a powerful civilization that had chosen to work within the Council system despite being capable of much more. When that cooperation was no longer welcome, they had simply revealed their true strength. "Prepare a message to Council Speaker Velthar," Kexamorian ordered. "Inform the leadership that our mission has failed completely. The humans are far more advanced than we believed possible. We cannot force them to return to the Council through military action." Admiral Nam Seojin allowed the surviving alien ships to limp back toward Council space, but not before making sure they understood the message. Humanity was no longer interested in serving as the galaxy's maintenance crew and security force. They would defend themselves against any aggression, and they possessed the technology to make that defense completely effective. The defeat of the Council's largest military force sent shockwaves across the galaxy. Species that had always assumed human weakness were forced to reconsider everything they thought they knew. Dr. Bae Young-sik sat in his archive chamber on Earth, surrounded by centuries of human records that told a story the galaxy had never heard. As keeper of human historical documents, he had spent decades collecting evidence of how the Galactic Council had really treated humanity. Now that the truth was finally coming out, his careful documentation would prove essential to understanding what had gone wrong. "Doctor," said his assistant, researcher Kim Naeon, "the Council archivist Zenthari has agreed to meet with us. She says she has important information about the Council's treatment of human contributions." Bae Young-sik nodded with interest. Zenthari was one of the few aliens who had worked closely with humans over the years. Her species, the Archival Collective, dedicated their lives to preserving knowledge and maintaining accurate historical records. If anyone would have noticed the systematic discrimination against humanity, it would be her. Meanwhile, on the damaged Council station Concordia Prime, the aftermath of the failed military expedition was causing panic among the leadership. War Admiral Kexamorian had returned with barely half his fleet intact, and his reports about human military capabilities had shocked everyone who heard them. Council Speaker Velthar floated in the emergency session chamber, its crystal body pulsing with agitated light. Representatives from dozens of species demanded explanations for how humans had become so powerful without anyone noticing. "This is impossible," declared Trade Minister Korvash of the Zephyrian Consortium. "We have monitored human development. For decades, their technology was always inferior to ours." Zenthari stood slowly in her section of the chamber. Her species looked like tall, thin beings made of living metal, with data ports covering their bodies that allowed them to interface directly with computer systems. As the Council's chief archivist, she had access to more historical information than any other being in the galaxy. "Speaker," she said, "I request permission to present evidence that may explain the current situation." Velthar's light flickered with uncertainty. "What kind of evidence, Archivist?" "Records that show how human contributions to Council projects have been systematically ignored, stolen, or credited to other species for the past 47 years. The chamber erupted in protests and demands for details. Zenthari waited for quiet, then activated a holographic display that filled the center of the dome. The display showed official Council records dating back to humanity's first contact with alien civilization. Dr. Bae Youngsik had transmitted these records to Zenthari through secure channels, finally revealing the truth that he had been documenting for decades. The evidence was overwhelming and undeniable. The first incident occurred 3 months after humanity joined the Council, Zenthari explained. Human scientists discovered a new method for improving faster-than-light communication systems. The official records show that this discovery was made by the Crystalline Institute of Advanced Research. The display showed 2 sets of documents. The first was a human research report dated 6 months before the official crystalline discovery. The second was the Council's announcement crediting the crystalline scientists with the breakthrough. This pattern continued throughout human membership in the Council, Zenthari continued. Human innovations in medicine, engineering, and physics were consistently credited to other species after delays of several months or years. More evidence appeared on the display, showing dozens of similar incidents. Human scientists would submit research papers that were rejected or ignored. Months later, alien researchers would publish nearly identical work and receive full credit for the discoveries. Dr. Bae Youngsik had documented the most egregious example, known as the Proxima Incident. 5 years ago, human marines had saved an entire crystalline colony from destruction by hostile raiders. The human ships had arrived first and fought off the attackers while suffering heavy casualties. But the official Council records credited the rescue to hegemony forces that had arrived hours later to find the battle already won. According to these documents, Zenthari explained, 37 human soldiers died defending the crystalline colony of New Harmony. Their sacrifice was never acknowledged, and their families were never even notified that the battle had taken place. The chamber fell silent as delegates absorbed this information. Many species had always assumed that humans were simply not skilled enough to make significant contributions to galactic civilization. The evidence suggested that human achievements had been deliberately hidden from public view. But the most shocking revelation was yet to come. Zenthari accessed the translation system's core programming and displayed code that few beings in the galaxy were qualified to understand. The universal translator that allows all species to communicate has been deliberately programmed to distort human speech, she announced. Human proposals and suggestions are automatically modified to sound more primitive or aggressive than they actually are. Dr. Bae Youngsik had discovered this programming during his years of working with the translation systems. Human diplomats had often wondered why their carefully worded proposals seemed to cause offense or confusion among alien delegates. Now they knew that their words were being changed before other species heard them. The translation errors were subtle but devastating. Human offers of assistance were changed to sound like demands for payment. Human scientific theories were modified to include errors that made them seem less credible. Human cultural expressions were altered to appear crude or threatening. For example, Zenthari continued, when Ambassador Park Minji gave speeches about human achievements, The translator changed her words to emphasize human military capabilities while downplaying their peaceful intentions. The evidence kept mounting. Trade agreements had been structured to benefit alien corporations while giving humans only basic necessities. Resource exploitation rights on human-discovered worlds had been transferred to alien companies through legal technicalities that humans were not allowed to understand fully. Scientific equipment that humans had designed and built had been classified as joint ventures, while all profits went to alien partners. Delegate after delegate stood to demand explanations from their own species representatives. The Botanical Confederation discovered that their food distribution systems had been based entirely on human agricultural innovations that had never been credited. The Peaceful Alliance learned that their most successful diplomatic protocols had been developed by human negotiators whose contributions had been erased from the records. War Admiral Kexamorian sat in stunned silence as he realized the implications of what he was hearing. His species had built their military reputation partly on tactics and strategies that human officers had developed during joint training exercises. The hegemony had claimed credit for defensive innovations that had actually come from human engineers, working in integrated project teams. Council Speaker Velthar's crystal body had grown dim as the full scope of the discrimination became clear. "How did this happen?" it asked. "How did so many species participate in this systematic deception?" Zenthari displayed the final piece of evidence, a series of classified communications between council leadership and major species representatives. The documents showed that the discrimination had not been accidental or unconscious. It had been a deliberate policy designed to keep humanity in a subordinate position while benefiting from their skills and creativity. The policy was justified as necessary for galactic stability, Zenthari explained. Human technological advancement was considered a potential threat to established power structures. By limiting their official recognition and political influence, the Council believed it could use human capabilities without allowing them to become too independent. Dr. Bae Youngsik watched the Council session through secure communication channels, feeling a mixture of satisfaction and sadness as the truth finally emerged. He had spent decades documenting these injustices while watching his people accept unfair treatment with patience and dignity. Now the galaxy could see exactly why humanity had chosen to leave. The revelations continued for hours as more evidence emerged. Human contributions to art, literature, and culture had been systematically excluded from galactic databases. Human historical achievements had been minimized or attributed to alien influences. Even human genetic diversity and biological adaptability had been studied and exploited without proper acknowledgement or compensation. As the session ended, delegates from hundreds of species sat in stunned silence, trying to process what they had learned. Many had genuinely believed that humans were a primitive species that benefited from alien guidance. Others had known about the discrimination, but had assumed it was minor and justified. None had realized the full extent of how humanity had been exploited and marginalized. Council Speaker Velthar finally understood why Ambassador Park Minji had looked so determined when she announced humanity's departure. This had not been an emotional outburst by an ungrateful species. It had been the inevitable result of decades of systematic injustice that had finally become unbearable. The galaxy was beginning to realize that humanity's withdrawal from the Council had not been an act of rebellion. It had been an act of justice. 1 year had passed since humanity severed all diplomatic relations with the Galactic Council, and the galaxy was a very different place. Council Speaker Velthar floated alone in its private chamber, surrounded by reports of systems failing and civilizations collapsing. The great station, Concordia Prime, was operating at barely 30% efficiency, and dozens of member species had withdrawn from the Council following humanity's example. The crystal being had ruled for 3 centuries, but it had never faced a crisis like this one. Trade networks had collapsed without human protection. Scientific research had stagnated without human innovation. Even basic communication between species had become unreliable as the translation systems continued to deteriorate. Speaker announced, its assistant through the failing communication system, "We have prepared the message as you requested." Velthar had spent months debating whether to take this step. The Council's pride had been badly damaged by humanity's departure and the revelations about systematic discrimination. Many species still believed that military force could bring the humans back. But Velthar had come to understand that pride was a luxury the galaxy could no longer afford. The message was broadcast across human space using every available communication channel. It was not a demand or a threat, but something the Council had never offered before, a genuine apology. To the Human Federation and all human citizens, the message began, the Galactic Council formally acknowledges the systematic discrimination and exploitation that humanity endured during 47 years of membership. We apologize for failing to recognize human contributions and for denying humans the respect they deserved as equal partners in galactic civilization. Ambassador Park Minji received the message in her office on Earth, where she now served as Foreign Minister of the Human Federation. The new government had been formed after humanity's withdrawal from the Council, representing all human colonies and settlements across the galaxy. She read Velthar's words carefully, looking for signs of deception or manipulation. "What do you think?" asked President Lee Sang-woo, who had been elected as the first leader of the Independent Human Federation. "Are they being sincere, or is this another attempt to manipulate us?" Park Minji had spent 20 years dealing with alien politics, and she had learned to recognize genuine desperation when she saw it. "I think they're finally beginning to understand how much they need us," she replied. "But understanding and respecting are two different things." The message continued with an invitation for humans to return to the Council as full partners with equal voting rights and representation, but Park Minji knew that words alone would not be enough. If humanity was going to rejoin galactic civilization, it would be on completely different terms. Captain Lee Do-yoon commanded the human fleet that traveled to the neutral meeting point selected for negotiations. His ships were now equipped with the most advanced technology humanity had ever produced, making them easily superior to anything the Council possessed. The aliens had finally learned that humans were not a primitive species in need of protection. "Captain," reported his communications. "Officer, Lieutenant Choi Sun-woo, we're receiving a transmission from the Council delegation. Speaker Velthar requests permission to begin formal negotiations." Lee Do-yoon studied the alien ships on his display screens. The Council delegation was impressive, with representatives from over 200 species, but their vessels looked old and outdated compared to human designs. The past year of independence had allowed humanity to advance technologically at an incredible pace. Dr. Kim Taiwan had spent the year analyzing all the alien scientific data he had copied from Council databases. Working without the restrictions that had limited human research for decades, he had made breakthrough discoveries that pushed the boundaries of known physics. Human science was now advancing faster than the rest of the galaxy combined. "Doctor," said his research partner, Dr. Cho Mik-young, "the preliminary negotiations are about to begin. Are you ready to present our technological capabilities?" Kim Tae-won smiled as he reviewed the data that would shock the alien delegates. Human researchers had not only matched the most advanced alien technologies, but had improved them in ways that seemed impossible. The Council was about to learn that their former servants had become their technological superiors. The negotiations took place aboard a specially constructed station in neutral space. Ambassador Park Minji led the human delegation, supported by experts in science, military affairs, and economics. Across the table sat Council Speaker Velthar and representatives from the most powerful species in the galaxy. "We are prepared to offer humanity full membership in the Council with equal voting rights," Velthar began. "Human representatives would serve on all major committees and participate in all important decisions." Park Minji nodded politely but did not seem impressed. "That's a good start, but humanity has additional requirements that must be met before we consider rejoining galactic civilization." She activated a display showing the human demands, which had been carefully prepared over months of internal debate. The alien delegates studied the list with growing amazement at the scope of what humanity was requesting. "First," Park Minji explained, "humanity demands oversight authority for all translation and communication systems used in Council operations. We will not allow our words to be distorted or our meaning to be changed." Engineer Kang Ji-won had designed new translation protocols that would prevent the kind of manipulation that had plagued human diplomacy for decades. The aliens would have to accept human technical superiority in this area or face continued communication failures. Second, we require formal reparations for decades of stolen innovations and uncredited contributions. Our scientists and engineers deserve recognition for their work, and our people deserve compensation for their sacrifices. Dr. Bae Young-sik had calculated the economic value of human contributions that had been credited to other species. The total amount was staggering, representing trillions of credits in research, development, and implementation costs that had never been acknowledged. Third, the new council charter must include strict anti-discrimination provisions that prohibit unfair treatment based on species origin, age of civilization, or technological development level. All member species must be treated as equals regardless of their size or political influence. This requirement would fundamentally change how the council operated. Many powerful species had benefited from the current system that allowed them to exploit weaker civilizations. But the collapse of galactic infrastructure had proven that cooperation was more valuable than domination. The negotiations continued for weeks as the alien delegates struggled to accept humanity's terms. Some species argued that the demands were too extreme and that humans should be grateful for any offer of renewed membership, but the reality of their situation made resistance impossible. Director Choi Hye-sung had prepared detailed intelligence, reports showing how the galaxy had deteriorated without human participation. Piracy was rampant, trade networks were failing, and several star systems were on the verge of economic collapse. The Council needed humanity far more than humanity needed the Council. We understand that these terms represent significant changes to Council operations, Park Min-ji acknowledged. But humanity will not return to a system that treats us as second-class citizens. We have proven that we can thrive independently, and we will only rejoin galactic civilization as equal partners. Dr. Yu Sulgi demonstrated human technological advances that left the alien delegates speechless. Her dimensional manipulation systems could revolutionize space travel and communication across the galaxy. Her energy generation methods could solve resource shortages that had plagued civilization for centuries. But these innovations would only be shared if humanity's conditions were met. The breakthrough came when several smaller species announced their support for human demands. These civilizations had also suffered under the old system, and they saw humanity's return as an opportunity to create a more fair and equitable galactic government. Admiral Nam Seojun's fleet provided a powerful reminder of humanity's military capabilities. The ships that surrounded the negotiation station were clearly superior to anything the Council possessed. The aliens could not force humans to return, and they could not survive without human cooperation. Governor Lim Da-yoon reported from New, Busan, and other human colonies, showing how quickly they had advanced during their year of independence. Human settlements were more prosperous and technologically advanced than ever before. They had proven that they did not need alien oversight to succeed. Finally, after months of negotiations, Council Speaker Velthar accepted humanity's terms. The new Galactic Accord was signed by representatives from over 600 species, establishing a government based on equality and mutual respect rather than dominance and exploitation. The new council would be headquartered on a jointly constructed station with human defensive systems protecting all inhabitants. Engineer Kang Ji-won's shield generators and Dr. Yu Seulgi's phase drive technology would ensure that the seat of galactic government could defend itself against any threat.